Hey, everybody, welcome back to Built Different. My name is Nicholas, and I'm the host of this podcast. And today I am joined by the one and only Alex Martinez. Really quickly, before I let Alex take the floor, because I'm very positive you guys are going to get a lot out of this conversation, I just want to, give you guys a few details about Alex really quickly. Alex is a husband. He's a father of three, and Alex and I actually met about a year and a half ago. This is a faith-based man and NextGen Home Loans, where he is the co-founder and divisional sales manager. They are one of, and I'm very proud when I say this, one of the few faith-based mortgage companies here in the United States. Alex was in the Scotsman Guide top 50 for loan volume last year in 2025. And really quickly, just before we start with the questions, one thing about NextGen that I want you guys to get out of this call is that NextGen Home Loans is not just another mortgage company, but they're, if I could say this, a leadership development center that specializes in mortgages. And I've had the pleasure of working alongside Alex and his team for quite a while now, and I've seen how every single person that's joined that company has essentially become a CEO in their own right. And I really, really want you guys to take notes. Grab your popcorn, grab your cafecito, whatever you have, because this one's going to be fun. So, Alex, thank you for hopping in, man. I know you're super busy. I appreciate having you here, and we'll get started, brother. I got some
Yeah, good
questions
morning.
for you.
Thank you for
So,
having me. Super excited for this, and hopefully I could provide a little bit of value for your audience here that's going to be watching this.
oh, you will. I'm positive of that. So, obviously, Alex, before you and I met, you never told me this, but I had to do my research, and I saw that you initially started off in education. You were a teacher. Before mortgages, like how did that start, and how did you end up transitioning into mortgages? Can you talk about that for us,
Yeah, of course. So let me take you all the way back. I'm gonna take you all the
please?
way back to the beginning. It's gonna take me a little bit to set the context, but I'll do my best. So
You're good.
first of all, you should know that I am a first generation American. That means my parents were born in Mexico, and I was born here in the States. And for a lot of us, first generation Mexicans, or just anybody first generation Americans, sorry, it was always instilled in us since we were kids that we needed to go to school. So
Yeah.
I can hear my mom, I can hear my dad as a kid, because they never had the opportunity to do so. So I like to say our parents were the ones who brought us to the States for a better opportunity,
Yeah.
and so it was always instilled in me as a kid that I needed to go to school, I needed to study, I needed to get a degree. And so, as a young adult, I was an athlete, played football, baseball, basketball in high school. Lucky for me, I was good enough to walk on at Fresno State, win myself a tryout, and make the spring team. So after graduating high school, I found myself attending college at Fresno State, where I was studying for uh, kinesiology,
Oh, wow. Okay.
in science. But then there was too many science classes, so I was like, yeah, this is too difficult. I switched my major to physical education. So I end up graduating from Fresno State with a physical education degree. I become a teacher, and I'm a young dad. I had my first daughter when I was 20 years old.
Wow.
So by the time that I'm 21, 22, graduating from Fresno State, I had already been working a couple jobs on top of going to school. So I was working at a juvenile hall at the time. I was a probation corrections officer inside of a juvenile hall, making 17, $18 an hour, which was a lot of money
Yeah.
for a young teenager, broke college student. And so I inside the juvenile hall there was a administrator, because we do classes with the kids every day. And he pretty much told me, hey, like when you're done here, he knew I was going to school to be a teacher. He's like, when you're done here, come to the interview. I'll hire you. You can work for us inside the institution. Well, I was going to school to be a PE teacher, which is a single subject credential, and that was going to make me do a multi subject credential.
Okay.
When I graduate from Fresno State, I want to become an intern, because typically as a teacher you have to do student teaching, which is like 2 years of free labor. Well,
Oh, wow.
unfortunately for me, I already had a family. I already had kids, two kids at that time. I already had my second daughter, who was born in 2017.
Wow.
So this is now like late 2016. My wife is already pregnant with our second daughter. Um, and I gotta figure out how I can start making money quick with this
Yeah.
education thing. And so I decide to forego the traditional student teaching route because I got to make money. I find this academy that allows for you to do some courses over the summer, and then you can become what's called an intern teacher. Basically, you're not a real teacher yet. You got to do 2 years of internship,
Yeah.
where a mentor comes and observes you teaching class, whatever. But at least you get to start getting paid a salary. So that's the route that I chose. So one day I was working graveyards at the juvenile hall. I get off like at 7 in the morning. The job fair is around 10 a.m. So I have some downtime. I go to my car. I sleep in the parking lot. I go into the job fair where I pretty much go directly to the administrator that was in the juvenile hall. He like he I pretty much already had the job, so I had to just go there. They had 15-minute interviews, and by the time I got there, I was like the fourth or fifth in line. So I'm like, dang, what am I gonna do? Like, am I just gonna go back to my car and sleep? And I'm like, well, I'm already here. I might as well go talk to the rest of the schools and administrators that are here.
Yeah.
I stumbled upon a PE table, and they're hiring for a physical education teacher and a athletic director. And I'm like, bro, that's me. Like,
There you go.
that's me. Small school, new school. It's a charter school, and I go talk to them. Really kick it off with the principal. It sounds really promising, but I already have this job offer from the juvenile hall teacher. That one's going to require me to get more, a multi-subject credential. The one with the PE job is gonna. That's already what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Long story short, I tell the PE teacher, the principal, hey, like I really like your position, I really want it, but I already have this job offer. How soon until like I can find out whether or not I'm gonna, get the job? So he says,
Yeah.
well, let's do this. Let's do a test interview on Monday. So I said, perfect. Sign me up for the earliest time you have. I go back to the juvenile hall principal and I'm like, hey, thank you for the offer. They gave me this HR packet that's like due next day by like 5 p.m. Otherwise, the offer is like null and void.
Yeah.
And I say, look, give me until tomorrow afternoon. I found this other opportunity. As I've told you, for the last 4 years that I've been working here at the juvenile hall, I really want this position, but PE is what I'm called to do.
Yeah.
So I go to the interview and I'm just anxiously awaiting a phone call. Phone rings. I get the job offer for the PE job. So
Let's
then
go.
I jump into this new school and I'm there. It's a new school. I'm a new teacher with no experience. Literally, I showed up one day, Nico,
Yeah.
from being a juvenile hall probation officer, and I show up to the classroom with 40 sixth graders, and now all of a sudden I'm a teacher with no. I never subbed a day in my life. I never did any kind of student teaching. Literally, I just show up on day one, and I'm like, all right, cool. Now I'm a full on PE teacher. So the first 2 years were rough. They were
Yeah.
very rough.
Can
Because if
imagine.
anybody with the background in education is watching this, that classroom management is the most difficult thing to master. So I got eaten up by those sixth, seventh, and eighth graders my first and second year, and it was painful. And to kind of land the plane here, I did that for 2 years. Year 3, year 4, it just got rougher because I didn't
Yeah.
know this at the time, but my administration was not the strongest, and so I felt like I was not only was I a new teacher, but I was also kind of getting undermined
Yeah.
as a teacher. Kids would do stuff. I would do my best to kind of correct them, and I didn't have any backup from admin. So year 3, year 4, I started getting really frustrated, and that in 2020 is when I met Andy. And so
Okay.
that's a little bit of my background with how I went into how I started off as a teacher.
Yeah.
And the point that I was trying to make when you first asked me the question was, imagine how heartbreaking that was for my mom. For my parents was like okay, so I checked the box, right? I went to school, I got the degree, I got the career, which honestly, kind of looking back, was more so for my parents than it was for me,
Yeah.
because it was just wired in my DNA
Yeah.
to want to accomplish that for them, and I did. But when I found myself at the end of year 4, like looking up at the mountain, thinking, "Dang, like teachers do this for 30 years,"
Yeah.
and looking back at the last 4 and being like, this is gonna drive me crazy fast.
Yeah.
So at that point in late 2019, I got to the point in my life where I was already kind of looking for other stuff. I was already like listening to the podcast. I started
Yeah.
reading some of the books. Like I was kind of I started in the phase of like self-development. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, let me start listening to some podcasts. I started watching YouTube videos. That's kind of when I started feeding my mind.
Yeah.
All before I
Uh,
met Andy in 2020, but
and then those of you guys that don't know, Andy is obviously Alex's partner at NextGen. And you brought up a point that I kind of wanted to, like, before I obviously move on. You said something like trying to please your parents. Obviously, both of my parents are born in Haiti, right? So I'm the same as you, right? Like first generation American. And what's really interesting about it is all my life, especially being the biggest brother of 5 kids, I've only ever wanted to make sure that I was doing right, not just for my parents, but also for my siblings as well. Something that was really important for me was that how can I set the best example for them? How can I be the best version of myself? And I took the typical route. I did well in school, like straight A kid. I was second in my class when I graduated. I went to college, and immediately I get into college, and I'm like, I don't know if college is for me. And I know that sounds kind of crazy because it's like, well, this smart kid who's very athletic, he plays all these. I was playing like 6 sports in high school. Like, why would he say college is not for him? And I had rushed into college because it's what my dad always wanted me to do because he didn't get a chance to go to college. And he was like, my dad had me at 20 as well, by the way. So my dad's like 46 right now. I'm 25, turning 26 in 2 weeks. And my dad's got 5 kids. And I didn't want to let them down. I didn't want to disappoint them, but I felt like I was wasting so much time in college. It felt like the classes were too easy. It felt like I wasn't in the right degree. And I switched to 3 different schools, by the way. I went to 3 different schools across the state of Florida. And it's always because I was looking for something more. And it wasn't until COVID hit. And I remember calling my dad. I was like, look, I can't find a job here. I'm wasting my time in school. And I'm going to come back home because I can't keep up with the apartment, all these things. Long story short, my dad tells me, hey, we're starting a mortgage brokerage, blah, blah, blah. My dad had left the retail side. He's like, just come and help me build if you can. And I said, you know what? I said, let me do that. Let me give it a shot, right? And I came in to do marketing and help with like promoting the company. But then all of a sudden, I started taking phone calls because they were a small team, and then we realized like, holy, like maybe I can be a good salesman. And then my brother ended up joining because he saw what was happening, and it took me 3 months to close my first deal. And then maybe a year later, me and my brother are doing 10 to 20 loans a month.
Wow.
And Alex and I are going to talk to you guys about like how that growth happens. But believe it or not, I still wasn't happy. And I was still doing it to please my parents. I was still doing it to please my dad. And I needed to make money regardless. And,
Yeah.
and trust me, I was doing it. But I knew that this wasn't long term for me. And I knew that mortgages wasn't going to be the end all be all for me. I knew I wanted to kind of get into something else. And when the opportunity for Leaf 360 and running the software company popped up, I jumped into that. I was like giving up all this mortgage stuff. So that leads into my question.
Can I give you some flowers really quick, Nico, before you
Oh
jump
yeah,
into
go
that
ahead, go
question?
ahead. Yeah,
Because for those of you who haven't had a chance to meet, not just Nico but his dad Christian, man, I I admire you and your dad so much because your dad's super young.
yeah,
He said he had you at 20, so that means your dad's what, 46?
yeah. He's 46. Yeah,
Yeah, see, so he's a young dad, and I see your dad, and how he has discipled all of his children. Because if I'm not mistaken, a lot of your brothers are actually in the business with you, right?
every one of us. Mateo's 16, so he can't yet.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah,
I just want to take a moment to give not just you but your dad your flowers for what you guys are building, and
yeah,
more than anything, what you guys are doing for the legacy of the Mora last name, man. Because
yeah.
yeah, when I met you, just really quick before you get into that question,
No, you're good.
so I started in mortgages in 2020, right after jumping into after leaving teaching, which I'm sure we'll talk about here shortly. But
Yeah,
um, I quickly found out that I had a very like organized and just like so the disc profile, right?
yeah, yeah.
I started off as high D, high I, but then I quickly, when I started getting a team and assistants and stuff, I started realizing that I was way more S and C because I needed to
Mhm.
be way more structured. So
Yeah,
I was the guy that had tried every single CRM that you could think of, that was out there by year 4, year 5, when I, got this trophy back here for Scotsman's Guide. I was in the midst of it. And one day I'm looking for something that could integrate with our LOS because that was the biggest pain point. And I find this freaking handsome, young, guy on Facebook talking about, just making Loom videos. And then, that's how I found Nico. So it's
yeah,
been about close to 2 years now since we met. But
yeah.
anyway, brother, I wanted to just give you some props for what you guys are doing at Leaf 360.
I appreciate it.
Honestly, like I said, I'm a guy that is very particular about my files and how they're structured, and how they're saved and how they're organized and how we operate as a team and my workflows. And before Leaf 360 came about, obviously you introduced me to Follow Up Boss, but now
Yeah,
all of our team has transitioned to your platform because of how incredible it is. So
thank
I
you.
wanted to just take a minute to give you some flowers, brother, because
I
you deserve them.
appreciate it, and I'll give you your flowers back, man. At the time, I was doing a lot of like Bible and scripture posts, and I remember we connected along the lines of that, right? Which I haven't been as active in it, which I should. But I just remember I remember seeing what like the values that your company had. Obviously, both of us being Christian, and I was like, man, I feel really good about these guys, and I think Next Gen, which at the time you guys had like a different name as well, right? But I was like, I think these guys are going to be huge, and I was like, I want to be a part of that journey, and bro, like 2 years later, look at us now. It's really exciting to see this partnership develop. But what I wanted to ask you was, so obviously leaving teaching, going into the mortgage industry, how was that transition for you? Because I know a lot of people that are listening to this call are maybe not even in the mortgage industry right now. I just got back from an event and they said the top mortgage broker might not even be in the industry right now, like
Mm.
in the next 5 years,
Yeah.
because of the way that AI is developing. So obviously AI wasn't really a thing at the time when you were transitioning. What did that look like for you? What were the difficulties? What worked, and maybe what from your background helped you become so successful so quickly? Because you did it quick, if we're being honest. You guys did.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So my wife and I we bought our first house in 2017. So by 2020, when I was exiting, becoming a teacher, it was time for us to refinance. And just me being analytical, I knew what mortgage insurance was, and so we started getting mailers. But back then, I was just kind of stuck in the mundane. I was just stuck in the mud. I feel like I was just kind of going through this life of just routine.
Yeah.
That I told my wife, like, hey, just call one of them. Well, she says, hey, I have this. My sister went to college with this guy. His name is Andy. He's
Oh,
a loan officer, and he can help us with the refinance. So there we go. We set up an appointment with our Andy, who is my broker now. He's been
yeah.
one of my best friends and leader for the last 6 years. He's the founder of the company. He helps me with the refinance, and he's sitting across the table from me, Nico, and he's having a hard time closing my wife on why our loan amount is going up. My wife is drilling him. I'm like, wait, why is our loan amount going up? We're at 237. Why is it going up to 250? And I just, again, by being analytical, I understand how the amortization schedule. I
Yeah.
can just see him struggling, and I'm like, hey brother, do you mind if I borrow your pen really quick? And I'm like, babe, look, here's what he means. And then I start breaking down like why it makes sense for us to refinance, right? And he's like, whoa, bro, like how did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. And he was like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a teacher. He's like, no way, I went to school to be a PE teacher. So then we just immediately hit it off. In his desk, he had some books just like I do back then. And like I told
Yeah.
you a little bit ago, I had just started. I wasn't a big reader, and so I had just started reading some books. He had Principles by Ray Dalio back there, kind of connected on that. And so that's how I got into the business. And so I left that meeting thinking like, what the heck is a mortgage broker? And remember what I told you about teaching. I was already like frustrated. I was already like, I almost didn't even want to be a teacher anymore. Then I found this young freaking handsome Hispanic man. I follow him on Instagram, and all these messages that he's putting out on social media are just like speaking to me. They're like just
Yeah.
speaking life into me. He's freaking, it looks like he's making money. It looks like he's like changing lives. It looks like he has all these different things that at the time I thought I wanted.
Yeah.
So then what happens is, as a teacher, you always know when your next break is. You're
Yeah.
always gonna know when your next, vacation is. And so I remember we were 3 weeks away from spring break. At the time, I wanted to just go back to the office and be with them. We go on spring break. We're about to leave spring break, and one of our admins is like, "Hey, just an FYI, I'm not sure if you guys know, but this thing of COVID is about to break out, and so you might not come back." And I remember thinking, like, "Please, Lord, do not let us come back." I go
Yeah.
on spring break. COVID breaks out. COVID breaks out, which means I get to teach from home. Um, I keep my salary. I just had to prep my lesson plans once a week. The rest of the week, I was at the office, like with these guys. At the time, it was just Andy and a couple friends. Um, so I'm just there trying to learn, trying to pick up on something,
Yeah.
and and so I got to keep my teaching salary. So to answer your question, Nico, for me, I actually feel like the stars aligned perfectly
Yeah.
because one, I got to keep my teaching salary from that was in March. By April of 2020, I had already closed my first refinance. Right. So I like to say it was like God's divine intervention, a little bit of luck, and then just a really good market, because I
Yeah.
didn't need to know anything at the time. All I
You
needed to
did it.
know was, hey, you have a 5%. I can get you a 3%. And that's
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
I had a lead and I had a client and I was working on refinance. So by April, I had closed my first transaction in refinance. By May, I did another three. Um, um, June, I did like four. And so by the time I got to December of 2020, my first, half year as a teacher, I had already made more money as a loan originator than I did as a teacher
As a
that year. I
teacher.
remember when I got my 1099 versus my W-2, I was like, oh gosh, look, like I made more money. But some of the recent challenges, some of the early challenges that I went through was the company was small. I didn't know it at the time, but I was entering a startup. It was not this big established company that we are today.
Yeah.
So my mentor was so busy trying to keep up with his production, along with helping the other people on the team at the time, which was like just two or three of us. So I was just like a fly on the wall trying to learn.
Yeah.
I screwed up. A lot of the deals that I got at the beginning were all my friends. They're all
Yeah.
like my sphere of influence. Because I remember looking back, it was almost a script. It was like, "Hey, how are you? I'm doing great. How's COVID treating you? Hey, well, it's kind of sucks, right? But I'm actually doing mortgages now." And then they would say, "Oh, really? I heard the rates were at 2." And I was like, "Yeah, you're absolutely right." Like I
I've
already
been
knew they
there.
had a house, so that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
kind of my angle to get them in, right? And well, I was trained to tell people that they didn't have to make two mortgage payments,
Oh,
right? Because
that
when you do
yeah,
a
yeah,
refinance,
the
it's like, hey,
typical
you get
script.
to skip two payments. So I would
Yeah,
actually, part of my sale, part of my pitch to the clients was, hey, you can skip two mortgage payments, and that's kind of savings for you, right?
yeah,
Well, I didn't know how to close deals efficiently. So what I was getting to the end of the month of the mortgage payment that they hadn't made, and I was finding myself telling them, hey, you know what, like, we're clear to close, but you're gonna have to make your mortgage payment this month on the 29th, because like we're not ready to close yet.
yeah,
So a lot of the deals that I had at the beginning, I screwed up, and the point is that it's a lot of trial and error.
yeah.
And mortgages, you don't know what you don't know, and
Mhm.
unless you have a mentor that's going to be there to kind of hold your hand and guide you,
Yeah,
like anything in life, it's just figuring it out.
yeah,
First couple ones you're probably going to mess up, but after the second, third, and fourth one, you start to figure out a little bit.
yeah,
Um, and then you just continue getting better from there.
yeah. You talk about that. I remember me. I'm the type of person. Um, I'm very. I don't want to say. I guess empathetic, but I also I like to put myself in people's shoes a lot, and I almost felt guilty when I started doing mortgages because I didn't really understand what mortgages were. I didn't understand APR and all these things, and one of the biggest issues that I had was trying to sell people or help people was that I didn't quite understand exactly what I was doing. And I remember one of my very first clients that I closed. We spent every single phone call talking about video games. And I know it sounds really weird for all of our, like everybody that's watching this, and you're like, where's he going with this? But Alex mentioned something. You don't know you're not going to know everything. That's for sure when you get into this industry, and that's okay. I was very blessed to have a great team. Even though we were a small team, I had a great team that was able to support me, so I could talk about video games to clients and still have a team that could back me when I didn't really know everything about mortgages. But one thing that I learned very early on my career, it's not about what you know. It's about who you know, and it's also about making people feel like you actually care about them. Because at the end of the day, no one's going to want to work with you just because you're Scotsman guy, top 50 loan officer. Like they couldn't care less, really. Like if we're being honest, if a loan officer approached me and said, "Hey, I'm one of the top 50 loan officers in the States," I'm like, "Okay, cool." That probably tells me that you're really busy. So you're maybe not going to give me that VIP service, right? Clients don't care about that. But one thing I did realize was that when you make a person feel like a VIP, you'll figure the rest out. And what I'm trying to say is that very early on in my career, the way that I got most of my business was by me just being relatable and personal with these people and really trying to understand them without selling them. So I would go to open houses with my clients, which was very non-traditional for a loan officer. It's usually the buyer's agent that goes.
Mhm.
I would say, "Hey, are you going shopping this weekend?" "Oh, I'm not doing anything. I'll come with you." And they're like, why would you do that?" I don't know. Let me check it out. I want to make sure that the house that you're getting is all good." And then I would show up, and then the agent would be there, and the listing agent, and then they would see I'm the mortgage broker. And at this point, I knew a little bit more, so they're asking me questions, and I'm able to help. And I remember one time the listing agent was like, "Man, I've never had a loan officer show up to an open house. That's why you guys got the offer accepted, because I see that you guys are working as a
Mm.
team." And that's what it takes, a team, right? Like you can't do
Yep.
it on your own. And I want that to lead into my next question is obviously as a Christian man, as a faith based company, I think a lot of times, especially early in my career, I thought I could do everything on my own. And the more I read my Bible and the more I just talk to God, you start to learn that you can't do anything on your own. So if you could talk about your faith and how that's helped shape how you run your business and even your family, if you can kind of go into that for our viewers out there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I'll tell you this. I grew up Catholic. Um, Matter of fact, I still carry around the Virgin Mary right here behind my phone. On
Yeah,
the flip
I see
side of
that
this,
as well. You got the little,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. On the flip side of this is actually when I lost my dad to cancer in 2022, and so on the back side of this is what
Oh,
they handed out, during his services. And then as you can see, I have the Saint Mike
Yeah.
Michael Archangel here. His sword is broken, but he's still up there
Yeah.
stepping on the devil. But I grew up Catholic, and um, for me, I guess I've always had a relationship with God,
Yeah.
um, but I didn't start stepping into it until really I got into mortgages.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, I think today, I sit before you um, as a man of faith, as a man of God, as a God fearing man, and I've built not just my business on that, but now my household, my marriage, my children, and so I think that what happens is it's this. I heard this at a conference that we went to um, last week, which is a faith-based contest. It's called Altar Call, which I invite you all to look into. Ryan Blair has $2 billion worth of exits, and he's the CEO leading that movement, with just faith-based companies coming together. Um, there's good ego and there's bad ego, right?
Mm.
The good ego says the results are God's, right? I am here before you today because of God, right? You give it back to him, right? You got to take it to the 99-yard line, but as soon as you score that touchdown, hey, God helped me do
Sure.
this. I got the assist, right?
Yeah.
And so that's good ego. Good ego comes from a place of gratitude. Good ego has you feeling grateful for all the things. You're grateful for the bad call with the client that you had. You're grateful for the freaking escrow that you lost. You're grateful for losing two escrows in a week because you know what? I can't wait for the day that I lose five escrows in a week because that probably means that I have 10 in the pipeline. So good
Amen.
ego the results are his. Bad ego is the results are mine. I did this. That's my trophy, right?
Yeah.
Like this is my. So what I have learned about being a faith based entrepreneur is that one, we pray over everything, right? We pray before we eat. We pray before we meet. We pray before we make an important decision. We literally will put God in the center of it. And so what that does is there's a verse in the Bible which I'll find here and I'll reference. I think it's in the book of Matthew's, where it talks about how I'll do my best. I'll find it, but I'll reference it.
Yeah.
It talks about how um, well, actually, yeah, I would
Probably
like to
open
look
it
for
up
it just
if
so
you got it. I
I
got
don't
it right
screw it
here.
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll find it here shortly, so I don't screw this up. But he basically talks about how the water flows. It's Matthew's. Oh man, I'll find it. He talks about how water flows, and
Yeah.
so when God is leading you, he's going to lead you just like water flows. And if it is to be in his name, then it will happen, right? And so what
Yeah.
we do is we put all of the important decisions, we put all of the big clients, we put all of the things before him. And if it's in his will for it to come true and for it to happen, then then it will, you know? And
Yeah.
so I think that leaning on our faith, and not just that, but being one of the you see, I feel like a lot of people are deeply rooted in their faith, but they're kind of quiet about it.
Yeah.
I like to say we're one of the trailblazers in California. I know there's a couple other mortgage companies that are doing it as well, but we are proudly faith based, and we like to attract those types of people. And you know what? God puts them in our lives and in our company. We're not even the ones that have to go and do the finding. They come to
Yeah.
us. But yeah,
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question. I think that it makes it so much easier to run a business and just have a marriage and raise kids and live life when you know that there's a higher power,
Amen.
and ultimately it's his decision.
Yeah. Are you talking about the wise and foolish builders on building your house on rock versus sand? I don't know if that's what you're referring to. Um,
I'm not. I don't think that's the one. But let me read.
yeah.
Talk to me about that one.
Yeah, so
Reference it.
obviously, like we're gonna take a little bit off beat here, right, guys? So in Matthew, in 7 verse 24, it says, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The
Mm,
rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his
mhm,
house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." And
mm,
every time I always have to go back to that verse. I love it. It's one of my favorite, and it's because I think a lot of times we tend to rush into things. kind of like how you talked about, you pray before you pray before you meet. We tend to start building without a foundation, and what happens in life with a family, with business. I don't have a family, but with business, and I've seen this with my own personal production as a loan officer. Is things are going good, and you forget to continue to take care of the foundation. Some people forget that the foundation needs treatment, right? Just because you built a good foundation in the first place doesn't mean you have to give it a regular inspection. It doesn't mean that you don't have to take a look at the solid fundamentals of your business and revisit it. That's why you'll see a lot of the top entrepreneurs, a lot of the top family men, a lot of the top whatever it is that you're doing in life. These people practice athletes. They practice the most simple, basic things over and over again. You'll look at a guy like Usain Bolt and you're looking at his warm up and the way that he practices, and it's like, man, I could do that, but can you do it all day, every single day, consistently, nonstop? And that verse just, I kind of think about next gen like that, how you guys are consistent with how you do your meetings, with how you guys onboard your new LOs, with how you guys treat your LOs, with how you guys open up your calls, like with how you guys end your calls, just everything about you guys. It seems like you guys have a solid foundation. Um, and I truly do think that is a testament to the fact that you guys are not just relying on yourself, but you guys are kind of like you said, you're relying on a higher power. You're putting your trust in God that, hey, he's going to give me the tools. I'm just gonna carry it out. And I don't know if I rambled there, but hopefully that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, it does make perfect sense, and I think that you're hitting on something. And this is what I'll reference. I found the verse. It's actually Proverbs 16:9. I'll talk about it here shortly. But
Oh yeah,
here's something that I heard a story that I heard last week, which I think is gonna hopefully this will it'll have the same impact for you as it did to me. So we
yeah,
were at this conference, right? And in this conference there are 8, 9, 10-figure CEOs, people who have walked the walk, people who have built and sold companies and exited, and where they're learning. We're the smallest company there. And the gentleman takes the stage and he's telling a story about one of his friends who has a $20 million company. Guy's really well off.
yeah,
And he calls him one day and he's like, "Hey, you got to come to altar call. You got to help us build God's kingdom." And he's like, well, like I don't need to grow my business. Like I'm good. I live a good life. I play golf. My company's making $20 million a year, whatever. And he's like, "Why would I want to do that?" And he tells him, "Well, because you can, and not everybody can." And I think there's a lot of power and wisdom in that, because not everybody was blessed with the talents to be able to you know
yeah,
and so I'm sure you're familiar with the parable of the talents in the Bible.
yeah.
Um and so I like to think, for those of us that were given the 5 gifts, it is our duty to
Duty.
multiply them
Amen.
and
It's a
and, and
gift that
build
you have to
God's
share with
kingdom.
others.
Yeah. And so here's a verse. So Proverbs 16:9. uh I'm sorry, Proverbs 21:1. It says, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, like the river, like the rivers of water. He turns it wherever he wishes." Right? Meaning, like, the Lord has my heart in his hands,
Yeah.
right? And just like the waters flow in the river,
Yep.
right? He's going to guide my heart, you know,
Yep.
how he wants. And so
Yep.
I think that when you have that foundation, you have that understanding, you have that, like, just, you're built on that. um any decision, regardless of outcome, is good or bad,
Yeah.
you know that it's not in your control.
It's not
And so when
at
you
all.
when you release that control and you give it to him, life is so much easier.
Dude, so much easier. I mean, man, when I was making the transition from working as a loan officer to Leap 360, I was stressed. I was losing sleep. I thought I was gonna start getting gray hairs. I thought I was gonna start balding. Like I was really stressed. And I was 22 years old at the time. I'm 25, turning 26. And I was like, there's no way that a 22-year-old should have this much stress. I don't have a family. I don't have anybody I'm responsible for. Why am I so stressed? And it's because all these things that I wanted for myself came crashing down. Money, riches, cars, all of this. I was never even a person who liked the finer things, but getting into the industry, you start making more money, you start wanting these things. I was realizing none of it was making me happy.
Mhm.
And I went from making a lot of money to very little money going into a startup. And I was actually a lot happier. And one thing that really grounded me was that no matter what in life, I can't control anything. I
Mhm.
can't. I can't. And when I started to understand that, um, that doesn't mean I'm just going to sit back, relax, and then hope things fall in my pocket. But when I started to understand that, it made me realize that everything happens for a reason. I can look at every failure as an opportunity to move towards success. I look at failure as success. I always say this: if I wasn't in the mortgage industry, even when I was miserable being in it, I wouldn't have the opportunity nor the knowledge to be able to work with people like yourself, to be able to work with people that I work with every single day. I wouldn't be able to speak your language in the mortgage industry. Mortgage is a language of its own. Like realistically, it is. If you're not a mortgage broker, you just don't get it, right? But it's like that in any industry, and I'm sure everybody here can relate. So obviously, Alex, I wanted to ask you this. You know, what do you think separates somebody who makes it in this industry versus somebody who doesn't? Um, yeah, just like what do you think? I
Well,
know it's a tough question.
here's my thoughts. So when I first started, like I said earlier, I didn't know this, but I was a fast starter. So
Yeah,
for me, that became my reference point, right? When I got to see people come in after me, year two, year three, year four, and I would see them struggle. I'm like, wait, why is this? Why? Like, because
yeah,
I would just think back to how easy my journey was, right?
yeah,
But again, now having the wisdom that I do and having, the wherewithal to look back and say, well, you got really lucky and you entered into
yeah,
the market in a really good market.
yeah,
I've actually gone to see people, um, come and go and come into the company and succeed and come into the mortgage industry and then like not succeed or have a slow start. And I think that there's a like one or two common denominators or characteristics that I see in people when I know like, okay, this person's going to do great, right?
yeah,
And the first one, when you're first starting off, and it might sound cliche, but it's just work ethic. You know,
yeah,
it's when you're in a season of recreating yourself, regardless of what that transition looks like to you. Because now, today, as I say here before you today, Nico, when people join our company, I actually will advise them like, you probably shouldn't do this. Like, I don't know what you think, because there's this framework. It's called the cycle of change,
mhm,
right? And at the top of the curve, and the top of the curve, there's uninformed optimism, which means that you're watching loan officers, you're watching real estate agents post houses and give keys and celebrate and popping champagne. And so you think, oh,
yeah,
cool, like I want to be a loan officer. I want to
yep,
pop champagne and hand over keys. So that's called uninformed optimism. And so then what happens is you jump in and now you're like, wait, this is way more difficult than what it looked like on social
yeah,
media. So now you become what's called informed pessimism. Now
that's
you
yeah,
know it's difficult. Now you
yeah,
know this is not as easy as it looked online. Now you're in the trenches and you're like, yeah, this is tough. And then
yeah,
at the bottom, there's this thing that's called the valley of despair, which is where most people go and then they'll just jump into the new thing, and then it's
yeah,
uninformed optimism, and then the cycle repeats
yeah,
itself, right? And so we hang out in the valley of despair because when you're in any new industry, when you're in any new trade or profession like mortgages, there's this thing in business is called a black hole. It's typically about 5 years long, right? Which is where you have to just grind it out. You're just
yeah,
getting up. You're losing the battles. You're losing the rounds. You're getting punked left and right.
yeah,
You're losing deals. You're just learning. You're in a
yeah,
season of learning, not earning. That's what people
yeah,
don't know. And so it's
yeah,
only when you have the work ethic and then you just the persistence to not give up, that you start to kind of make it out that valley of despair, and you enter into what's called informed optimism. Right now,
let's go.
now you know how, like, you've done it. You know what it
Yeah,
takes. You know the process. And so now you're optimistic and you're informed.
yeah,
And then you just keep going, and now that's where you hit success, right? That's called the cycle of change. But
I love that.
I think that most people give up too soon. I think that
Yeah,
most people come into the business, I don't know, thinking it's going to be rainbows and butterflies and it's going to be easy. And I think that as a leader, it's really easy to see when somebody's got the not just the personality but the work ethic. And
yeah,
I've seen multiple examples in our company now. There's a young guy in our company. His name is Aaron. And we like to call him Young David, right? Like David in the Bible,
David
David
Goliath.
who's alive,
Yeah,
because yeah, he's this young, skinny, kid. He's not a kid anymore. He's like 20 something. But
he's a
when he
kid to
came into
you.
the company, he was very timid, right? But he was here every single day, and he was like taking his development seriously, and he was like, grinding away for a year and a half.
Yeah,
And I see him today, and I'm like, wow, look at this changed man, but it was really easy to see that he was going to succeed because he would always show up,
yeah,
right? And so I think at the beginning, it's about that exactly. It's about showing up,
showing up.
and also here's a little bit of wisdom, is whose leadership are you under, right?
Yeah,
Because
that's super important.
most people think that, They see these top producers and they're like, hey, there's 5 levels of leadership. There's a book by John Maxwell that talks about the five leadership
Hmm.
levels of leadership, right? And level 3 is results, right? So when most top producers have results, people think, oh, I want to go be under this person's team.
Yeah.
Uninformed optimism. What you don't know is that that person's super busy trying to keep up
Yeah.
with their pipeline, that they probably don't have a lot of time to hold your hand,
Yeah.
especially early on, you know? And so level 4 in leadership is when you have successfully duplicated yourself. So I would invite people to look for loan officers who have other loan officers that they've duplicated, they've taught,
Yeah.
they've trained, and now that loan officer has become a rock star,
Yep.
right? That's a level 4 leader. And then of
That's what my
course a
dad did.
level 5 leadership is like, when you admire somebody for their character, for who they are, which is what
Mm,
we're all, striving to become.
yeah.
You see the proof, you see their marriage, you see their kids, you see their businesses thriving. That's a level 5 leader. And so
Yeah.
I think that one of the most important things when considering which company to join, doesn't matter which one, is look at their leadership, right?
Yeah.
Like just like they're going to interview you,
Yeah.
interview them,
Yep.
and so yeah, hopefully that helps. Is
Yep.
work ethic and persistence, and then finding the right mentors who have already done it and successfully duplicated themselves.
Bro, you just answered the next question I had. Just so that you guys can know what I was going to ask him. I was going to say, for somebody listening right now, who's thinking about making a change and jumping into the mortgage industry, what would you tell them? And I feel like that is the perfect answer, right? I
Yeah.
hope y'all were taking notes. You got to have the work ethic. You got to show up. Don't let social media fool you. When I was a loan officer, I was always on social media because I kind of had to be, but I realized that I didn't, and I'll say what I mean. I was still posting on social media, but I wasn't consuming social media. There's a
Mm-hmm.
difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you see a lot of the successful people on social media. I've talked to a lot of them. They're not scrolling. They're not looking at what everybody else is doing so they can be trendy and this and that. You find what works for you, you stick to it, and it's going to pan out.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't like it when maybe I post like Bible verses and stuff like that, or maybe I post me going racing on the weekend with my go karts, and they're like, oh, you should have a personal and a work Instagram. And I understand if you want to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But me, I was like, well, if somebody's going to work with me, I want them to know who they're working with.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to work with me because of what I believe and what I do, then go work with somebody else because it's not going to be a good experience working together. When I was a loan officer, I've had to fire clients in the sense that I've had to tell them I just don't think we're a good fit. And I remember the first time I fired a client, it was a doctor, and he was trying to tell me how to do a loan. And I responded and I was like, if I came into your practice and tried to tell you how to operate on me, how would you feel? And he was kind of dumbfounded. And it was after relentless calls and emails. And I told him, I just don't think we're a good fit. And I was at the point in my career that I could fire a client in that sense that I was okay. I wasn't losing sleep. I remember when I first started, I was losing sleep over
Mm-hmm.
pre-approvals not getting under contract. Like, why are they not under contract yet? What's going on? Like, the market's good. And when I got to that point, I was like, okay, I'm very blessed to be able to say I can choose who I want to work with. But kind of like you talked about, it takes a while to get there. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I would even commend you if you fire a client when you first start, because that
Yeah.
shows that you're valuing yourself and your growth over just taking an easy, whatever it is, right? I think that's a very mature mindset to have, to be able to choose who you want to work with. I'm a very big people person. If anybody knows me, I really only like to work with people that I like. And when I say that I like a lot of people. So it's very hard to make a person like me not like somebody. But at the end of the day, it's your character, it's how you treat people. I don't do well under the results leadership in the sense that I will never follow somebody just because they're successful, because that doesn't mean anything to me. I like to look at, how do you treat your wife, your husband? How do you treat your kids? What is it that you do in your spare time? Like, who are you? That's the people I like to follow. And I think that's why me and my dad work so well together, because don't get me wrong, me and Christian, like my dad, we argue every day. There's not a day that we don't argue. I promise you. I mean, father, son working in a business together, but we care a lot. But at the end of the day, I respect him. I trust him because I've seen what he's done with our family. I've seen how he's gone up and down and up and down. And one thing about my dad is, and I think this was, it's Rocky. It's not how about how many times you get knocked down. It's about how many times you get back up. And I've seen my dad get back up every single time, and that's
Mm-hmm.
inspired me to continue rolling with the punches. And I think that's really important when you're jumping into an industry like this, especially a sales job. You got to learn how to roll with the punches. You got to learn how to get knocked down, and you got to take those hits. You got to take those angry calls, those
Yeah.
angry emails, those angry text messages, even when it's not your fault. Sometimes you just got to take the blame. It's not easy, and it's not all that it's cut out to be that you see on social media. It's not an easy career by all means.
Yeah, you touched on a couple things that just you're speaking my language, Nico. We
You
like
speak
to say
mortgage.
that we're in our company we have five core values, right? And I'll tell you what they are really quick, right? We're team players. Why?
Yeah,
Because the mortgage industry, the standard is that there's top producers and there's gatekeepers, and they just do their thing. They produce. They don't
yeah,
help anybody else. They're isolate. So we're team players. So anybody in our company that does not give back, from the top producer to the newest loan officer, they'll stick out like a sore thumb.
yeah,
We share value, right? We change lives, not just our partners, our clients, our own. We're the ones in our family that are actually helping change lives, right? By
yeah,
giving people the opportunity to come into the mortgage industry and do that for themselves. We're always improving. In our company, we read a book a month, right? So when I first started, I was like, what do you mean I have to read a book? What do you mean I have to turn in a book report? We read a book a month, and that goes to, that holds true for everybody.
yeah,
Processors, in-house, like W2
yeah.
staff,
Are you guys all
1099
reading the
loan
same book
officers.
too, or is it like everybody has their own book?
So we'll throw out a couple recommendations, and then sometimes we'll
Okay,
give them a little bit of flexibility. But
cool,
there's got to be a book
nice.
report, right?
Yeah,
Gratitude attitude, which this one's probably arguably my favorite. Gratitude attitude, because everything starts with gratitude. You know,
yeah,
if you're just grateful to have a studio to shoot, grateful to have friendships to do podcasts with, grateful for the client that got mad at me on a call, great, because great gratitude will have you thinking like, I just want to make this place the best thing it can be, right?
yeah,
And the opposite of gratitude is ego, right? And so when you're in your
yeah,
bad ego, like I mentioned earlier, it'll
yeah,
have you kind of turning on your own people. It'll be like, why are my commissions and my splits and this and my
yeah.
cancellation because of the processor? It'll have you pointing
Oh
fingers.
yeah, yeah. You
So
see
we
that.
used to have a core value that was worth thumb pointers, right? Because we don't point the finger, we point the thumb.
Yeah,
But now we have gratitude attitude, and the last one is we play to win. Because yes, we're a faith based company. Yes, we're a family like environment, but we operate like a sports team, right? And so just like the Knicks game the other day, for people watching the
yeah.
NBA Finals, the craziest comeback in NBA history.
Crazy. It's
Like
29 points.
if you're a coach and one of your players is not performing, like maybe they're not on the right team,
Yeah,
you know.
take them out.
But we're a family. We're a family that operates like a sports team, and we talk a lot about the wheel of life. And you talked about this with your dad. So for us, it's not just about how good of a loan officer are you. There's a thing that's called the wheel of life. If you look it up, I would invite you all to kind of look into it. But most of us look at the wheel of life in just one little piece of the pie, right? It's just finance or business or work, right?
Hmm.
But there's also family, there's also health, there's
Yeah,
also finances, there's also your mind. Like there's the wheel of life consists of a lot of different things. So exactly like you said, we're not just
yeah,
about, hey, how good of a loan officer are you, but hey, how are you
yeah,
as a dad?
yeah,
How is it like to be your brother? What is
yeah,
it like to
yeah,
be your friend? you
yeah,
know and for us, what has gotten us to where we are, it's been our culture. It's been being super picky about the people that come into our company,
yeah,
because it's our secret weapon. We have culture, which it's a growth environment. Like our company, it'll force you to grow because the people around you are so freaking crazy about growing
yeah,
that it pulls you, and we're driven
yeah,
by vision. There's companies that are pushed by pain, which are constantly just reacting to the competition. Oh, look what they're doing. Oh, look what they're posting on social media. Let's do the same. They're
yeah.
being pushed by pain. And then there's companies that are being pulled by vision, you know? And I like to say that we're a company that's being pulled by vision.
I
And
love
before I
that.
forget, I know that I mentioned it earlier, but your question about my advice to people that would join the business is this. When I first started, I was of the philosophy that said, listen, burn the boats, like just leave everything behind, just jump in head first. Doesn't matter if you hit your head. It's actually not that wise, right? And
No.
so in the Bible, it also says, a wise man seeks wise counsel. So here's some
Yep.
wise counsel for you. It ultimately depends on where you are in life. If you're young, if you're in your 20s, you have, no children, no overhead, you're not married, maybe still
Yeah.
living with your parents. Yeah, there's a lot more risk that you can take, right?
Yeah.
However, for me, even though I was 20 years, 20 something years old, I already had a mortgage. I already, had my wife. I already had my kids. I had car notes. So it actually wasn't that wise for me to jump into mortgages and just leave everything behind.
Yeah.
So my recommendation for people would be, if you do have overhead and you are the breadwinner in your home, it's actually wiser to get fully licensed. Shameless plug here, but we have uh, an 8-week free loan officer training virtual, right? We teach loan officers how to become loan officers over the course of 8 weeks. We help them get licensed. And
Yeah.
then eventually, if they're a good fit for the company, then they can join, right? But
Yeah.
if not, at least you leave with 8 weeks of learning the ins and outs of becoming loan officers. And I think the website is freeloanofficertraining.com. But the
Put
point
it
that
in
I
the
was trying to make
description.
was it's actually wiser for you to learn the skill first, right? Get licensed, learn how to become a loan officer, find somebody that's already doing it, keep your income while you get licensed, find a mentor that's going to teach you how to do all the things you need to learn about becoming a loan officer. Then once you have start having a little bit of results, you can actually show
Yeah.
yourself that you're closing a deal, closing two deals. What I did, Nico, was I did the math. Back when I was a teacher, I was only making about $54,000, right?
Yeah.
And so when I came into the business, I was like, wait, how much do you get paid? How is it that you're compensated? I was like, oh, I did the math, and I'm like, oh, I only need to do 12 deals a year to make more than I do as a teacher. How much is it? I had no idea what it was to be a loan officer, but I was like,
Yeah.
12 deals, one a month? I could do
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
not knowing anything about anything.
Yeah.
But that would be my advice, especially for people who have a lot of responsibility, a lot of overhead, and they're the
Yeah.
breadwinners of the household. Get
Yeah.
licensed, find a mentor, then leave your job once you
Yeah.
have proven to yourself that you can do it.
I think that's I think that's very well said. Everything you described was me. I was 20. I didn't have a family. I didn't have overhead. I have a family. I'm sorry, not my own,
Yeah,
like no wife and kids. Right. I've been with my girlfriend for 7 years now. I met her when I was 18. I'm 25. So we just had our 7 year anniversary, which is pretty cool.
nice,
Um,
congratulations.
thank you. And obviously, you start thinking about life a lot differently once things start to get more serious, etc. But I had the opportunity to kind of train as a marketing guy, also as a part-time LOA. And I was just learning everything. I actually learned everything about processing before I even
Mm,
understood what originating was. So I was like working with my cousin Stan and understanding how to review pay stubs, documents, appraisals. Like I was learning all about that before I ever really got on the phone, which is cool. But at this point, I was very analytical. I didn't really know how to sell. So I just focused on being an educator. I was I did my best to know as much as I could. So when anybody got on the phone with me, they were like, they would get off the call saying, I feel a lot more informed. And that's what worked for me. Some
perfect.
people will come in, they fake it till they make it, which is fine, right? Like that's what I was doing too. You don't know anything and you're a great salesman. You know how to get people, and that's great too. But it was so much easier having that industry knowledge and being able to listen to people, just being a fly on the wall, because sometimes I would be setting up the camera and I'm listening to a sales call and I go, oh,
Mm,
that's how that works. So there's a cool down period. There's a waiting period before you can close all these things, right? You got to wait for the closing docs and you got to wait X amount of time. So I'm absorbing that information. It really helped me. As we guys, we're not going to keep you here all day. I kind of want to come to a close, but I do want to. Alex, you said shameless plug, but that was leading into my next thing. If somebody wants to join NextGen, they want to join your company. They're looking to take their game to the next level. Um, how do they start? Where do they find you guys? Go ahead and give your shameless plug, brother.
yeah, I actually got it wrong earlier, guys. Sorry about that. It's actually free training for loanofficers.com.
We'll put it in the
I'd invite
description,
you.
so don't worry.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
invite you all to follow. So right now we're based out of California. We are licensed in Arizona, Texas, Florida. We're obviously working on going nationwide. Um, I follow me on Instagram. I'm Alex the Lender underscore on Instagram, and yeah, NextGen Home Loans on Instagram as well. Yeah, so that's where you can find us. That's the best place. That's the best place for us to get connected. We have a
Yeah.
school community, which is the one that I just mentioned, right? Which is a
Okay.
free training for loanofficers.com. If you go there, it'll take you to our our landing page where you can register to for the 8-week course. Yeah, I would say I love social media. You mentioned this a little bit ago, which is exactly how I built my foundation. Is if you look at my social media up until recently, I for the first 3-4 years I never talked about mortgages. I was not the loan officer on social media saying, "Hey, let me tell you about this product or this program."
Yeah.
Even when I would go to real estate offices to talk to them, I would talk to them about everything except I would almost say, "Hey, I know you guys probably want to hear about my rates and my products. I'll talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that, but I actually want to talk about other stuff."
Yeah.
So on my social media, same thing, Nico. You mentioned it. Like, I post my kids, I post my wife. Right now my daughter's working with me. She's actually here listening. She's my executive assistant for the summer.
How old is she?
Um, she's 12.
Oh, wow, that's awesome, man.
Yeah. So teaching her about business, she just finished the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. We're debriefing that, and she's shooting content with me, talking about her takeaways on my Instagram. Go check it out. But my point is, I never used to talk about mortgages. I would
Mhm.
always do the opposite because my philosophy was like, look, if somebody's on my social media, first of all, they're gonna fall in love with me first. That's
Yep.
gonna help. It's gonna make them feel like they know who I am, so by
Yeah.
the time it's going to warm them up. So by the time that it gets to them reaching out or whatever the case may be, once, I do start posting about products or just programs
Yeah.
or even just showing success stories, they already feel like they've known me for the last 5 years. They know my
Yeah, you built
kids,
that
they know my
foundation.
wife, you know, they see me poking fun at my daughter. Like, so it builds trust. So I'm also in the same boat. I don't have a separate page. I don't have a personal and I don't have I don't have a personal and then a business page. I have just
Yeah.
one page where I talk
Yeah.
about everything because for loan officers or loan officers to be, here's one thing that you should know is people will work with you for who you are and what you stand for,
Ooh,
right? And what
yep.
your core values are and what you believe in, right? And how you are as a husband or a wife. And so um, I like to focus on who I'm becoming, right? And then I like to think that that's going to help attract rather than being the person that's chasing. Because
Yeah.
when you're early in the business, you don't have a choice but to chase,
You
like
gotta
Nico said.
chase. You have
You
to. Yeah.
you can't fire that client. You have to put up
You
with their
can't.
angry butt because you just unfortunately you need that to close, right? Because you need to
Yeah.
keep the lights on. So eventually, if you focus on building your character, developing yourself, the awesome thing about books is that literally there's any topic that you could think
Yeah.
about. Somebody's probably written a book about it, and you can
Yeah.
consume that 30 years worth of wisdom in as fast as you can read that book.
Yeah.
And that'll help you get unstuck in a lot of areas of life. It'll help you be built on a strong foundation, and you focus on becoming the person that you will need to become to be a top producer, to handle
Amen.
the chaos, to handle the agents, to handle the client that's mad at you because you're closing late.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wanted to share that because I think it's hopefully that helps anybody
No, man.
watching.
Dude, I mean, just being on this podcast, I feel like I've gotten so much wisdom from Alex. And Alex and I talk a lot. We don't talk as much as I would like to because we're both busy. Uh, and we both know that. But guys, I just want to say thank you to everybody that was watching. Thank you for tuning into the Built Different podcast. This is Alex, guys. This is Next Gen. And I would encourage you, if you're a loan officer, you're not happy with where you're at, or maybe you're looking to get into the industry, and you've sat through this whole call, this whole hour podcast, check them out. Check out Alex. Hit him up. Social media. I'm gonna put every link in the description. We really appreciate you guys for tuning in. And just check it out next time as we continue to learn more about how these top producers in the industry are building things a little bit different. Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
you mind if I share something really quick before you
Yeah,
actually
go ahead. Go
really
ahead.
close
Yeah.
this out? If there's a loan officer on this call still watching, 58 minutes later, what I'd invite you to consider is the following. Look, is most companies will teach you how to be a good loan officer, right? In the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, if you've ever read it, which is a great book to read, by the way, it talks about the quadrant, right? And then there's an employee quadrant, there's a self-employed quadrant, and then those only who graduate to become business owners, and then eventually investors. Most companies will teach you how to be a great self-employed loan officer. In our company, we like to say we're a leadership development center who builds people who just happens to do mortgages. So for us, the people who come into our company that are already closing 2 deals, 3 deals, a lot of times what they haven't realized is that they have mastered the salesperson skill. They've learned how to
Yeah.
close a lot of deals, right? For me, my best year was in 2025 when I got this thing behind me. But what I didn't know was there's actually new levels to unlock once you start becoming a business owner. Because not
Yeah.
many loan officers reach the point where they hire an LOA or a virtual
Yeah.
assistant or they hire a loan partner. And now they
Yeah.
start to grow and scale,
Start
delegate their
investing in
business.
technology, all these.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
We say, look, mortgage is the vehicle that's going to take you to wherever God places in your heart, whatever desires
Yeah.
you have in your heart that God has placed there. Mortgage is the vehicle that'll help you get there. But there's more, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot more. And so most companies will focus on teaching you how to become a producer. They almost want you to be stuck in that box. We actually invite people to think bigger. We have the best mentors. We have Hector Padilla, who has over $100 million portfolio in real estate. So if you want to learn how to acquire real estate through commercial, we have them. We have Chris Aguilar, who's one of the most freaking. I would invite you guys to follow these people on Instagram. Hector Padilla, Chris Aguilar, One of our mentors, faith based, one of the most honorable men that I know, also has probably 100 million plus portfolio. Ryan Blair, who has $2 billion worth of exits. We have the wisdom. The
Crazy.
Bible says,
The wise man seeks wise
seek
seeks
wise
wise counsel.
counsel. We
Yeah,
have wise counsel. And so, yeah, my invitation for any loan officer out there listening to this is like, hey, maybe you're in a company where you do feel like you figured out the production, you are a top producer. But look, I have met people, I'm only 6 years in the business, right?
it's
I have
crazy.
met people now that are 20, 25 years in the business, and they're still worried about their next funding. They're still like chasing the loan docs. They're still,
Yeah,
listen, I can tell you all the things that I want, but I can tell you what I don't want. I don't want to be, respectfully, a 45-year-old still worrying about my next closing, because I never
yeah,
focused on building anything during the last 15, 20 years career.
yeah,
And unfortunately, it goes by fast. So most people don't
yeah,
realize that. And by the time it's said and done, you look back at the last 15 years and you never built anything,
yeah,
So we focus on creating and building CEOs in our
yeah.
company.
And that's why we call this podcast Built Different. But that was a good way to close it. Oh man, that was awesome. Guys, check out Alex, hit them up. I have nothing else to say. If you walked away from this conversation and you're not interested, then maybe this conversation wasn't for you. No, I'm joking, but seriously, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you so much, Alex. Bro, this was awesome, and I can't wait to do this again. Go ahead and leave a comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Check out the next video, which I don't know when that's going to be coming out, but it might be soon. So anyways, have a wonderful day and thank you.
Thank you, Nico.